Welcome to More Fanime. I'm your fan of More Anime, Mr. Morfetto, and today we will be discussing the first half of the Punk Hazard arc of One Piece. I read from chapter 654 to chapter 677, and I gotta say, this is exactly what I needed after the Fishman Island arc, which I did love and enjoyed, but it did leave a lot to be wanted, I guess is the best way I could say it. It didn't really hit that sweet spot that the last few arcs had hit. Marineford hit such a high peak in this series. It was so far the peak of One Piece, and it was all building to that peak, and now we're kind of having to build back up to that, and I feel like Fishman Island was the beginning of that build-up, and the villains in Fishman Island were a bit lackluster, so I am very excited to say that I'm enjoying the villains in this arc a lot more. The villain being Caesar Clown, I believe his name is. Like I said, I read the manga, so I haven't seen the anime version just yet, so I don't know exactly how they're going to say it, but it's spelled out Caesar Clown. Not a big fan of his last name. Doesn't seem like a name. I don't know, especially since there's a character called Buggy the Clown type pirate man, and now there's a character named Caesar Clown. I don't understand that. I think it would have been better if he was just called Caesar or Caesar something else. I don't know. Maybe they say clown differently, but it's spelled Caesar Clown. Not a fan of that last name. I'm going to say it one more time. But I am a fan of this villain in a way that he is generally hated by me, the fan, who's reading his dialogue and his story. But this guy is he used to be an assistant, I believe, or a partner with Dr. Vegapunk. They worked together with the government to create weapons of mass destruction. And they butted heads a lot because this guy's an absolute psychopath and doesn't care who he has to hurt to perform his experiments. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I just really enjoyed this villain because he was very hateable so far. I also really enjoyed this first half. There was no giant backstory, so I am predicting that in the second half of Punk Hazard, there will be some dramatic backstory involving my Law, maybe, or Caesar Clown, or another villain that shows up at the end of this half called Virgo. I could totally see them giving us Law's backstory, a really sad backstory where someone dies like every other backstory in One Piece. It seems like every arc, almost every arc, has a sad backstory, and I'm predicting that in the next half of Punk Hazard we'll get one. I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because it does get a little predictable. And then sometimes when you read these backstories, you're like, oh god, but it does open a lot of their character to the reader, myself, the fan. It does make me care more about them. Like, one of my favorite backstories is Nico Robbins, and I already cared about her character because she was a badass. And when I found out that she went through all that shiz at O'Hara, it made me love her character even more, and she moved up in the ranks of my favorite characters in the entire anime world. So, the Punk Hazard arc, I thought was going to involve more of Dr. Vegapunk. He is an aspect of this arc, but we so far have not seen him yet. It's only the first half. Maybe he shows up at the end of the second half. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like he's working with Caesar Clown at all anymore. They don't seem like they really ever got along. I'm not even sure if Dr. Vegapunk is a villain or if he's being forced to work for the Navy, because I don't know. It seems like Frankie has some admiration for the guy from rebuilding his body using his technology. And he also helped Bartholomew Kuma program one last order into his, programming to defend the Sunny while the Straw Hat Pirates were training for 2 years. So he didn't say no to that, something that if he was a villain, he probably wouldn't want their ship protected. I don't know just yet, because I haven't met the guy. I don't even know what Dr. Vegapunk looks like. I want to know. I do. I'm assuming he's this old scientist man like Dr. Gero from Dragon Ball. But the arc kicks off with Luffy and the gang finally coming to the New World, leaving Fishman Island. They actually run into a sea of gigantic whales similar to Laboon. There's even a funny part where, I don't know if it's funny or sad, but Brook is like crying. He's like, Laboon, you're here. You came all this way to see me. And Usopp keeps saying, that's not Laboon. And it's just a group of whales that look like Laboon, his people, even though I thought Laboon was from a specific sea, maybe he is from this part of the One Piece world, but I thought he was from like the North Blue or something, and they brought him there. They found him, and that, if I remember correctly. Doesn't really matter. I just wanted to bring it up because these giant whales happened to be there, and they kind of ushered Luffy and the crew through a underwater vortex that kind of helped them out. Because if you remember at the end of Fishman Island, it showed Smoker and Tashigi capturing pirates that were popping up one by one out of the Fishman Island exit. And I was thinking in my head, at the minute that Luffy and the gang pop up, that they're going to have to fight Smoker and Tashigi if they're not busy. But this vortex took them way past wherever Smoker and their crew was. So that took care of that issue. They're quickly introduced to the New World in this crazy sea. And they now know that this sea is even more, I guess you could say, dangerous than the Grand Line, even though the Grand Line seemed pretty wild when you think about it. I can only imagine what they can do here that'll make it even more crazy than the Grand Line. The New World is supposed to be that next level. You thought the Grand Line was an easy cakewalk compared to this, is what I'm getting from it. They get a message from a weird message on their snail phone, I believe, of someone crying for help. And it was like this weird alert, and it was really funny because Nico Robin says, "Stop, Luffy, don't answer it. The majority of emergency alerts can't be trusted. It could easily be a trap set by the Navy." And Luffy doesn't listen for a second and answers the phone and says, "Hello, this is Luffy speaking, future Pirate King." And Usopp slaps him in the back of the head. He's like, "Not so fast. Don't tell them everything, you idiot." I love that Luffy's not afraid to tell people, "I will be king of the pirates," as he says at the end of every episode of One Piece. But yeah, there's some samurai slaughtering people on this mystery island, which turns out to be Punk Hazard, which also turns out to be a barren wasteland of fire and ice. But they decide that they're going to go rescue the person who made the distress call that says there's a samurai from Wano just murdering people. I'm assuming that every samurai comes from Wano, otherwise you can't be a samurai. That's what I'm getting from this, because we also met that samurai from Wano at Thriller Bark. So anytime we meet a samurai who specifically says they are a samurai, they are from Wano, is what I'm getting from this. We also see Smoker and Tashigi. They intercept this call and they say, "Ooh, the Straw Hats are here. They're in the New World." But now that they find out that they're going to Punk Hazard, specifically Luffy, Nico Robin, Zoro, and Usopp are going. Nico Robin and Zoro were all down to go for sure. but they all drew straws, and Usopp was kind of screwed. He's like, I don't want to go. And even, I think, Frankie is the guy that's saying, like, lucky you guys get to go to this island of adventure. And Usopp's like, someone switch with me. I don't want to go to this island. Even though I thought Usopp's supposed to be a brave warrior now, he's pretty much the same old Usopp, but with abs. They make it to this place, Punk Hazard, which is fenced off, and it says, do not enter. This place is off limits. No one's allowed to be here. Even the Navy. And it's on fire. This island is literally on fire. The crew, including Nico Robin, Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp, start stripping some of their clothes because they are melting with how hot it is here. I wonder how Luffy is affected by heat. You know what I mean? Like, by the heat of the world being made of rubber. They see giant skulls, I'm assuming of a giant, and last but not least, at the end of this chapter, they run into a literal dragon. I almost jumped out of my seat when I read it. I was like, oh my god. Now, not only did we make it to the New World, but the first enemy we found in the New World is a dragon. That's insane. It's like Oda, who was writing this, was like, what can I do to show people that the New World is a different place? It's not like the Grand Line was supposed to be the end all be all at the beginning of this series, but now that we've extended this series and it's so long, he probably thought, I need to up the stakes here. What can I do? Dragon, duh. So he puts a dragon in their way, I'm like, okay, well, this dragon's going to be an issue. Turns out they have a really cool fight with the dragon. Seems fun. It even seems like it's making noises, like it's talking. And at first, when they think that they can understand the dragon or they hear voices, I thought maybe that Luffy was able to talk to the dragon, because at one point in the Fishman Island arc, it was revealed that Luffy can understand Sea Kings, Neptune creatures, giant creatures. He can kind of understand them. So I thought maybe we were going into that aspect of Luffy, like he's now able to almost understand these mythical giant creatures, but that is not the case. That is not what happens. It turns out there's a farting samurai legs attached to the dragon that Luffy was able to hear, and the rest of the crew was also able to hear. It was actually a gag. Either way, Zoro ends up cutting this dragon's head off. Like, it was insane. He uses an attack called Death-ridden Song. I swear Zoro has got to have the coolest finishing moves in this series. In most of anime. He always comes up with the coolest sounding names when he uses his attacks. He does use some that he uses a lot of the times, like the 1,000-pound phoenix that he does a lot, but man, Death-ridden Song. They cut this dragon's head off, and I'm assuming what I love about it is this dragon was probably a main villain for this island to deal with at some point. And if Oda wanted to, they could have waited and been like, okay, and now you're gonna fight my evil dragon. And the dragon would have been an opponent then, but instead, Oda's like, nah, we'll get the dragon out of the way first, instead of waiting. We're just gonna go straight to the dragon. After Luffy and Zoro almost single-handedly together finish off this dragon, we find out that the rest of the crew, Nami, Chopper, Frankie, Sanji, and Brook, are all gassed by these people from Punk Hazard that are all wearing hazard gear so they don't get knocked out by this poison. I'm not sure if it's a poison, but they knock them all out. Sanji even notices, he's the first one to notice, oh no, there's some kind of crazy gas here. I need to warn the rest of the crew that shit's going down, but before he could make it to the snail phone, he passes out as well. They go back to Luffy and the gang, and they're dealing with these legs that are walking around with no body, no head, and it almost immediately made me think I thought maybe that his body was like sucked in and he was going to pop out any moment, like a really funny gimmick, like he was stuck or something. But it turns out this was literally just his legs. Luffy has a great time, by the way, with those legs because he attaches them to his butt to make it look like he's a centaur. Which is pretty funny because then they end up running into centaur-like creatures on this island. And I was thinking, man, maybe Punk Hazard is just this weird centaur island, which would be kind of weird, but not out of the box for One Piece because they've ran into bird people, they've ran into giants, they've met fishmen. I wouldn't be against the idea of a centaur island, and I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually do see a centaur island, but this is not one of them. And it took me a while to put the pieces together because we see these legs that are walking around. And then when Sanji and his crew wake up, Nami, Frankie, and Chopper, they wake up in this cell that they were put in by the Hazard people from Punk Hazard. The soldiers put them in. They find a chopped up head that's still alive. It's in pieces. And they put it back together, and it turns out to be the head of this samurai that I believe that they heard over the radio of the distress call that went out and they caught. And it took me a minute to put this together, but I swear, before they even revealed that Law was on this island, I felt like this was either... It had to be something involving Law, because when I saw Law and his abilities way back at the Sabaody arc, he chopped up some Marines, and he was able to cut people's heads off, but keep them alive, and cut their body parts up, and then stick them together. It seems like he can cut them up and then stick them together in any way, shape, or form, but they can also stick their pieces back together, which is interesting as well. So I was able to put together, before Law even showed up, that Law was involved in this. They even say this is kind of like Buggy. I believe Nami mentioned this is kind of like how Buggy's powers worked, and that's what I thought when I saw Law use his powers originally. I was like, this is sort of like Buggy's power, except he does it to other people instead of himself. And I just thought that was interesting. The crew decides to break out of this prison, and they decide to take the samurai head. Specifically, Sanji decides to take the samurai, who's a total dick. But the samurai from Wano decided to come to this island because he thinks his son is there. There's actually been a slew of children abductions happening in the New World. Turns out this Caesar Clown, the main villain of the series, of this arc, not main villain of the series of One Piece, but the main villain of this arc, Punk Hazard, has been doing experiments on children, trying to make them into giants, because after Frankie breaks them out using some of his laser cannons, which I'm surprised they took Frankie and didn't think, well, maybe we should take all his weapons off of his body. Or maybe they just assumed there wasn't any weapons on his body. My assumption is that Caesar Clown didn't see Frankie yet, before they said, oh, we'll just throw him in here. There's no way they'll break out with those giant robotic arms on him. Like, maybe we should detach those, at least, so he can't break out. They run into giant children and little children of all sizes. That's what made me think, okay, these can't be children of giants, because or maybe they were giant children, children from Elbath and children of regular folk, but I didn't feel like these children were naturally giants from the get-go. They end up getting attacked by the soldiers that originally abducted them, and the children ask Nami, like, please save us. We don't want to be here. They took us from our homes. And Sanji's like, forget those kids. Let's go. We're going to save this disembodied head, and we're getting out of here. But even the head is like, I want to find my son. My son is here somewhere. He's not in this room, but he's on this island somewhere. The kids even say there's more kids here somewhere, and they've met them. They're not the only ones. So Sanji, being the Nami simp, decides to help her out and the kids. So Sanji, Chopper, and Frankie beat the crap out of these these soldiers. I don't even know what to call them. The gas hazard soldiers. And that was cool. They kick butt, take names. Sanji's not worried about these guys. These are all fodder. They're weak. They have no way of beating even Frankie or Chopper, let alone Sanji. They go at it. We also get introduced to a harpy type character, this bird woman. Reminds me a lot of the harpies from the card game Yu-Gi-Oh! She's flying around. I believe her name's Monette. We haven't learned a whole lot about her in this first half, but she's also a villain here. Seems a lot more important than the hazard suit people. Brooke turns out to be still on the Sunny because they thought that Brooke was just a dead body, which makes a lot of sense. That they gassed him and they just saw these bones on the ground with an afro and thought, well, I guess they had this dead skeleton here for some reason. Why would you pick up a dead skeleton and take it to a prison? I would assume as well that it's not alive, especially since it was passed out. We jump quickly to Luffy and the gang fighting a variety of centaurs, people with legs, but they're different. Like there was one with like a leopard bottom, there was one with a giraffe bottom. Turns out they were all created by Law, because Law came to this island way before Luffy and the gang, and he wanted to stay on this island with Caesar the clown, and Caesar was like, you can stay, but you got to give my people some new legs, because all these people they were crippled by some poison gas, so they couldn't even walk, so he gave them a bunch of animal legs. Question though, so Law is able to reattach these people's torsos to these animals, right? But when Law separates things, they seem to still be connected to their original forms. So these animals, like their heads were removed and then attached to the torsos of these humans. So are these animals' heads still alive somewhere? Are they keeping those alive somewhere? Because if those animal heads were to die, would the bodies die as well? Or are these bodies that are now attached, these legs that are now attached to these prisoners that are on this island that work for Caesar Clown, are they functional, and how do they control them? It just doesn't seem, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it would work, because when the samurai was split up into his torso, legs, and head, he was still able to feel his body when it fell into the water. It was cold, and he was still able to feel pain in different parts of his body, even though they were separated. So these animals lose their bodies to these soldiers who became these centaur creatures. Now they have control of those legs, like full control. I'm assuming maybe Law can control that by controlling the heart, because he seems to be able to take the heart out of these creatures and people, which leads to an amazing, hilarious situation later on, where Law ends up switching a bunch of the Straw Hats up. 4 of the Straw Hats end up switching bodies, which is insanely hilarious, and it just completely threw me off. But before I get to that, there is a part in the series where there's these hazard people, right? And they're fighting with Sanji. He knocks off their masks, and they have goat horns. And it made me think of the Going Merry, because there was the Merry, I think his name was Merry. There's a guy that helped build the Going Merry who had goat horns. Like, I thought, well, maybe they're related, because there's these goat people, but at the same time, I'm like, well, they must have been put together by Law. So they aren't related to the guy way back at Syrup Village, is my assumption. But they all had goat horns just like that guy. It's not a big deal. Just one of those things that caught my eye. But yeah, the crew ends up getting swapped around by our boy Law. Law, I'm really getting into Law now. I know he saved Luffy, and I know he's done a lot of little things, and I love his design. He looks badass. I don't know what he's doing here. Oh my god, I almost forgot. Law is now a warlord for the world government. So Law has become a warlord. I'm assuming that the world government has completely changed since the last 2 years have gone by. But they decided that Law would be a good choice. And actually, Law ends up trading them a whole bunch of hearts, Navy soldier hearts. I'm assuming like important Navy soldier hearts that he's stolen over a period of time in exchange for letting him become a warlord, which gives him freedom to do whatever he wants, as long as he listens to the government. If the government says, hey, we're going to execute X, Y, and Z, I need you here to guard them so they don't get, the execution doesn't get interfered with, just like at Marineford, you have to do it. Kind of how Hawkeye Mihawk is a dog for the government, but he doesn't have to worry about being arrested or have to deal with the Marines anymore just because he does their bidding. I'm still curious to why he does that. But when the pirate crew ends up getting swapped around, including Smoker and Tagashi, they end up getting switched. They switch bodies as well, which is insane. I just thought it was so cool seeing them have to use the different bodies. Frankie was in Chopper's body, and he was like, I feel so warm because I'm fuzzy. And he's like, but I can't control your transformations, Chopper. And then Nami was in Frankie's body, which I thought would be a little bit funnier if they said, if she like noticed that she's got to go pee with his wiener now. I just thought that would have been a funny gag, but they never really got to that point, because when Sanji ends up in Nami's body, you can only imagine how much fun he was having at the time. He ends up inside of Nami's body and is just having a grand old time. He's like, I need to find a mirror and a camera so I can take pictures of this. This is wild. He was not even worried about being in Nami's body. But it's so weird they decided to do this, swap them around, because you would think in a lesser manga or anime that they just it wouldn't be funny. It would get over. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. How are they going to fight now? It just really worked. I didn't expect it, and it was a pleasant surprise the way it was written. Who else was in a body? Somebody else. There was Chopper. Frankie was in Chopper. Chopper ended up inside Sanji's body, I believe. So it was this whole ordeal. It would have been funnier if Luffy and Zoro and Nico Robin got switched around as well. Oh my god, I wonder if you could even take Brook's heart out, since he's a skeleton. I bet he couldn't do that. I would be surprised if he could swap Brook's soul with anybody, since Brook has the ability to leave his body now. That's really interesting. We also get to see Brownbeard make a return. If you remember Brownbeard from a few panels back, before the 2-year time skip, he was starting to take over some of Whitebeard's territories. I'll be honest with you, when I saw Brownbeard for the very first time, I thought, well, this guy's never going to be seen again. He's not important. He's just here to show that pirates are going to start taking over Whitebeard's territories now that Whitebeard's gone. But I was wrong. Brownbeard ended up being a big deal here. And this whole time, I'm trying to figure out who the villain is, who Caesar Clown is. Luckily, we get a small explanation for it. I'm hoping that we get to learn more about this Caesar Clown guy in the second half of this arc, just because he does seem interesting, and I do want to learn more about Dr. Vegapunk, so maybe there will be a flashback about them working together as scientists, trying to come up with these weapons of mass destruction. Seeing Tashigi and Smoker having to deal with being inside each other's bodies was hilarious. I love that Smoker just said, well, fuck it. I'm inside my right-hand woman's body. I don't want to wear a bra. Takes the bra off. I'm going to smoke my cigar. Here's your sword, Tashigi. Try to figure out my smoke abilities. That was one thing I was confused by. I'm like, well, if a person has a devil fruit ability, if you switch a body with them, does that devil fruit ability go into the other body? No, that devil fruit ability stays with the original body. So people like Frankie, who ended up in Chopper's body, was like, I don't know how to control your body. Give me a rumble ball. And he becomes the giant monster point Chopper. which was interesting because he could also not control the Monster Point Chopper, but Chopper could. So it's not only the new formulated Rumble Ball that allows Chopper to do so, it's also his mindset now. He's able to mentally control Monster Point, where when Frankie did it, he had no control, and it took Luffy knocking him the hell out to deal with him. I really do think that seeing Sanji within Nami's body was my favorite funny part of this series, but it was also great because she even allows him to smoke a cigarette. I thought that maybe she's like, stop ruining my lungs. It would have been interesting if Chopper, who was in Sanji's body, was like, I don't know what it is, but I don't feel good. Like, I need something. And he's like, you need nicotine because you're not smoking, and Sanji's always smoking. And since Sanji was in Nami's body, maybe he wouldn't even have the want for a cigarette, but I think that Sanji just really likes having cigarettes. So she allows him to smoke because it kind of gives him, I don't know, a way to think. It seems like when Sanji's trying to be serious, he lights a cigarette. So Smoker kind of gets set off to the side here. He kind of gets bitched out a lot in this first half. He doesn't really get to do anything of note. He does go head-to-head with Law before they switch their bodies, and I thought that was a cool little scuffle. Law has gotten a lot stronger in the last 2 years, or at least he's showing a lot more power. There's a point where he does that giant bubble where he can manipulate shit because he's the surgeon of death, and he like splits their ship in half, the Navy ship in half, and I'm just like, where did this guy get this power? How did he expand over the last 2 years? Why is he want to be a warlord other than to be free from being hunted by the Marines? Another big thing that this first half made me think about was, what is going on with Law's crew, the Heart Pirates? Because they aren't there at all. I have yet to see the rest of his crew in this first half. So I'm wondering, what if his crew was slaughtered within this last 2 years? Like, he went to the New World and they were all killed, or they were all taken prisoner. I could see that being a thing. Or because there's a big moment during this part of this half of Punk Hazard where Luffy's talking to Law and he's like, thanks for saving me 2 years ago. And Law's like, yeah, I saved you, but I want you to team up with me, and we're going to take down one of the four emperors, or more than one of the four emperors. But I love that Luffy's just like, which one? And they don't reveal which emperor they're going to be taking down, but Luffy's like, yeah, let's do it. But I'm wondering, this is my prediction, either Law's crew was slaughtered by one of these four emperors, and he wants revenge, and he wants to become one of the emperors, or two, one of the four emperors. My assumption would be Big Mom, since we just dealt with her a little bit in Fishman Island, and it feels like that battle's coming. Maybe Big Mom, maybe Law and his crew thought that they could handle one of the emperors by themselves, and she ended up taking his crew and keeping them prisoner. And she, or one of the other emperors, has his crew, and he needs help. But I still don't understand why he's on this specific island with this terrible guy, Caesar Clown, who's doing experiments on children, literal children, to make them into giants. At some point, it's revealed that these kids are being given drugs, so they are addicted to these feel-good drugs, so they can't leave the island because they're going to go through withdrawals. So I'm not sure how much of these drugs he's been giving to them, but he's been calling it candy, which is pretty damn dark. And this series usually doesn't go into the darkness as much, but damn, the idea that this dude was giving these, not only doing experiments on these kids, and who knows how many kids possibly died, but he's also giving them drugs and making them addicts. It pisses Chopper right off. We get to meet the Yeti Cool Brothers, which are kind of lame. Probably the lamest villains in this, even lamer than the Centaur Gang. The Yeti Cool Brothers, I'm assuming they're funnier in the in the anime, and I'm hoping that there'll be more of a presence in the anime. They're not much of a challenge. They don't even show their faces. They're only in it for a chapter or two. The Yeti Cool Brothers are assigned to get the kids back and end the Straw Hats, capture the ones that they can, and eliminate even Brownbeard. They shoot Brownbeard. This part pissed me off a little bit, because they end up like shooting Brownbeard with some giant guns, some rifles, and Brownbeard survives. It looks like they murder Brownbeard in cold blood. A guy who loves this island because he was saved by Caesar Clown, and it looked like he was totally dead and gone, and this dude ends up getting back up later on and helping the Straw Hats, and I'm like, come on, man. This guy would not survive those point-blank shots by these rifles. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I didn't feel like this Brownbeard character needed to be anything else than just being killed by these guys and showing just how ruthless Caesar Clown can be. That's my only complaint there. Sometimes Oda takes a character like Brownbeard and makes it look like they got killed, kind of like Conus's father back at Skypiea. Made it look like he died, and then he was just alive for some reason. I just think it's kind of annoying when it's like an obvious, well, there's no way to survive that. They're not a superhuman like Luffy or Sanji or Zoro. They can't survive an attack like this. There is a really cool cover story showing that Impel Down is a lot different after 2 years. Magellan is no longer the head jailer guy, the captain. He's no longer that guy. I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, they end up taking out the Yeti Cool Brothers pretty easily without much of an issue. We eventually team up with Law, and I thought that was a cool idea since he's got a plan to take out one of the 4 emperors. I do love the idea. I do not believe that Law would ever join the crew. He seems very independent. He definitely seems like a rival to Luffy. There's been a long period of time where I've thought, man, who is Luffy's rival? Is it Blackbeard? Is it Smoker? Is it Zoro? Definitely not Zoro. He's his right-hand man. They are not rivals, and I love that about their relationship. He's his first mate. That's who Zoro is. But Law, at least at this point, kind of seems like Luffy's rival. If it's not him, then I'm thinking it's this kid guy who also makes an appearance in this arc, but barely. I'm hoping in the second half we'll get to see what Kid's actually doing. But it looks like Kid and a handful of the other supernovas, that Apu guy, and the one who can predict futures, are teaming up. It looks like some of the supernovas are teaming up. Also, Kid, his bounty has gone up, and he's still worth more than Luffy. I'm wondering if that's going to be a running thing. Like, what does Kid do? What does this Augustus Kid do that makes him worth more than Luffy? Luffy took down the Marine Navy headquarters, Marineford. He took down their courthouse, Enies Lobby. Luffy took down Enies Lobby, Marineford, and he what's it called? Impel Down. Luffy took down Impel Down. He took down the 3 big pillars of the Navy, at least on the Grand Line. So what the hell is this Kid dude doing that makes him worth more than Luffy? What does the government think of this Kid guy? He must be right underneath Blackbeard as on their most wanted list. Maybe it's just because he murders. Maybe that's it. Kid is just a big murderer man. There is a funny gag where Law and Chopper have to team up, and they end up like tying Chopper to Law's hat, and I just thought that was very funny. Law ends up giving everybody their bodies back, except for Nami and Sanji, which I love because they were the best switch for sure. mostly because Sanji ends up taking Nami's body, and Zoro and Brook, they all go look for the samurai, who has his legs, by the way, now, but has no body. But Brook ended up dueling the samurai's body and at one point, and kind of knows where it's at. So they go to try and help the samurai find his body, which they do, it turns out to be this whole ordeal where Sanji has to jump into the water, like this ice cold water. Oh, did I even forget to mention that this island is half frozen and half on fire? Which is so cool. At first, when it was all on fire, I was like, okay, I guess this is something. But then when they found out the second half of Punk Hazard is literally a frozen landscape and this whole island is just hell on Earth. And they also find out that this island, this supposedly abandoned island, former scientist lab for Dr. Vegapunk, was the location of the fight between Okiji and Akanu, the two admirals that Luffy had to fight back at Marineford. Okiji being a kind of cool dude, no pun intended, he's very chill, versus the dickhead Akanu. Akanu ends up winning, but these two fought for like 10 days and changed the whole aspect of this island. I thought maybe at first that Dr. Vegapunk's experiments did this to this island, or the gas that comes out of Caesar Clown did this, but I was wrong when they revealed that Okiji and Okanu's fight just destroyed. I'm assuming he created so much lava and so much ice. It was the idea is insane. I haven't seen this fight yet. I'm hoping to see this fight. I hope they show it at some point. I hope it's not just something where they just talk about this amazing fight, because I'm assuming it was absolutely off the chain, but we don't get to see it. But we hear about it. We've heard about it at Fishman Island, and now we've heard about it here in the first half of Punk Hazard. I want to see Okiji and Akanu fight, even though Okiji, who in my opinion is the way cooler character, somehow loses. I want to know how he lost, because that dude was insane the first time we met him. Okiji, at the time, pre-time skip, was able to take out Nico Robin, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji without even trying. So I can only imagine what these two admirals did in this 10-day fight. Okay, we also get to meet another villain on this island called Slime, a pet, a scientifically advanced slug-like pet created by Caesar Clown, which is just this giant poisonous goo. Reminds me a lot of The Cube. If you've ever seen The Cube horror movie, it's pretty insane. This thing is almost indestructible, and the only way to remove it is to set it on fire, which causes a giant explosion. One of my favorite parts of Luffy and Law's team up is Law's like, all right, we're going to work together, and this is the plan. Let's follow the plan. And Luffy's like, yeah, let's do it. And as you know, Luffy never follows the plan. One of my favorite parts of Enies Lobby was when they came up with a plan and Luffy was like, all right, you sounds good, guys. And he just went right ahead and continued the fight without going with the plan at all. And same thing happens here. He tells Luffy, we need to use Hockey to capture Caesar Clown because he's a Logia Fidelio Fruit user and you can't grab him unless you know how to use Hockey. So Luffy just jumps right in and says, come out, you son of a bitch. We've come to kick your butt and then kidnap you. Like, straight up tells them what's going on. Luffy, to me, plays like any of my D&D characters. Like, I just want to get into the action. I will cause chaos if it means we can start fighting. And that's what Luffy's doing. Another funny thing that happens before they start the plan, quote unquote, is Nico Robin tells Luffy, this might be one of the funniest things to happen since the time skip, by the way. I think it's my favorite part, at least. Nico Robin tells Luffy, hey, if you team up with a pirate like Law, you're almost guaranteed that he's going to betray you, because pirates usually betray each other. And Luffy literally looks at Law and says, "Hey, are you going to betray me?" And Law says no, and Luffy just smiles like, "See? I mean, he's not going to betray me. He said he wasn't gonna." I just thought that was really funny, and I can't wait to see that happen in the anime. They end up having to deal with the slime. The crew ends up getting captured because they didn't know that another villain was on this island named Virgo that seems to be well known to Law and Smoker. There's this guy named Virgo who's pretending to be a Marine, who used to be he is a pirate, and he never got a name for himself, and somehow he became this spy in the Marines, and he's kind of a Vice Admiral, I'm thinking. He's also a Vice Admiral like Smoker, who's kind of in charge of the thing that Smoker's also in charge of. It's kind of weird. But this dude has been pretending to be a Navyman for years, and has been stealing these children and covering it up to help Caesar Clown. So Caesar Clown, the Slime, Virgo, and Monette seem to be the four main villains of this arc, and if you don't include Brownbeard and his crew, who were kind of just manipulated by Caesar Clown. But it's weird, because at some point, Luffy gets gassed by... he ends up breathing a lot of the gas, the poisonous gas that comes off of Caesar Clown. And Luffy says, no big deal. I can breathe in poison now because I dealt with that Magellan guy. And Caesar Clown says, "How dare you compare me to that paramecia user, devil fruit user guy?" I thought that, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought Magellan was a Logia type, that he was a poison Logia. Turns out he's a paramecia, so he doesn't necessarily become poison, whereas this guy that ate the gas fruit can turn into literal gas. But his poison doesn't seem to work on Luffy, since he was so badly poisoned by the most poisonous man on Earth, Magellan. So Luffy's able to take the poison, but then almost instantly Luffy does eventually get affected by something. He passes out, but at the same time, Law gets affected by something, and he goes down. But later on we find out that Virgo has got Law's heart, so my guess is that Virgo used that against Law to knock him out. It's just weird. It seems interesting as well because when Virgo shows up, he says, "How many years has it been, Law? You've grown." Like, how long has he known him? And it turns out that Monette has also been working with Virgo. At first it seems like Virgo's in it for himself, this mystery man. Turns out he's been a part of this whole plan from the get-go. And I just don't understand his relationship just yet with Caesar Clown, and I still don't understand eventually how did Caesar Clown take Luffy out. They haven't really explained that. Luffy goes down. Was it his poison or was it Virgo's power? Because I haven't actually seen what Virgo's power is. My guess, this is just a guess, because his name's Virgo, my mind thinks vertigo for some reason, and off the top of my head, this is just coming literally off of the top of my head right this minute. Maybe he can control people's equilibrium. That's the only thing I can think of. No big deal though. They end up helping the samurai get put together. The samurai can cut through fire, and they were able to get away from the giant slimes. Law's plans are not necessarily ruined that Virgo's there. He kind of planned for this. They end up breaking out of the cell before they get killed by the giant slime. Smoker and Tashigi end up getting their bodies back. We also find out that Doflamingo is a big part of this in some way, shape, or form. So my guess is we're going to get to see Doflamingo do some shiz in the second half of Punk Hazard. Because they say, hey, Law, I got a question for you. Who is Joker? They keep talking about that. And Law says, I used to work for him. That's how I know Virgo. But Joker is only his underground alias. In reality, he's a pirate, well known around the world as one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Doflamingo. Doflamingo, a very important villain that we've been introduced to a long time ago who hasn't really got to do a whole lot just yet. I'm hoping that we not only will get to see Doflamingo soon, but we also will get to see Crocodile soon, because it seems like they kind of had a tiff at Marineford. I would love to see Crocodile again. Crocodile, in my opinion, stole the show anytime that he was on screen, and I'm happy that he's free from prison. He's in the New World somewhere, and I'm excited to see him soon. We are still also waiting to see Nami and Sanji get their bodies switched back over as well. Brownbeard, like I said, ends up getting back up and helping the crew out. It's a whole thing. I still don't believe that Brownbeard should be alive, but it's not a big deal. I can look past it. I will never really see him again, I'm sure, after this arc. He still, even after all this, doesn't seem too important to me. Because we got Blackbeard and Whitebeard and now Brownbeard, and I just don't really care for him. I get his place in this story, though. They end up dealing with the slime. There's another smaller dragon that Vegapunk created. By the way, the dragon at the beginning of this arc was created by Dr. Vegapunk. So there isn't like a place full of dragons. I'm assuming they're all scientifically created creatures by Dr. Vegapunk that he used to protect his island. There is a scene where there's some like apples in a bag or some shit that look like they're turning into a devil fruit in one of the panels, and I was wondering what that was all about. Like, there was a bag of apples on this crate that the slime consumed, and they look like they were becoming devil fruits. So, like, is this guy creating devil fruits on this island? I really don't know. But this whole arc leads to the crew finally getting back together in chapter 677, right at the very end, right when we finally get to see what Augustus Kid is up to, dealing with other members of the supernovas. We finally get to see the crew get back together thanks to Law's plan, and they were able to hide in some smoke and whatnot. And there was a funny part where Sanji is in Nami's body and he's running and he's like, I can't keep pushing myself. Nami's heart can't handle this much running, and then he grabs his chest, and it's Nami's chest, and he's like, and he gains power because of that, so he could keep running and grab the dragon so they can get away. I know this sounds like gibberish if you haven't actually read this chapter. Smoker and Tashigi switch their bodies back, which is good. You know, their split up idea was kind of getting old as well. It is cool to see Smoker working with Luffy. Not only Smoker working with Luffy, but also Law. This whole team up is going to be really interesting because Smoker can now also use Haki, and so can Tashigi, so can Luffy and Law, and Sanji and Zoro was confirmed because at one point Law even asked Luffy, who on your crew can use Haki? I was hoping that more than just Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy could, but for sure Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy could, according to Luffy. So, that's exciting. And, you know, this samurai guy is at full power now, and he seems actually pretty powerful. When I first met him as a disembodied head, I thought maybe he was just going to be an annoying gag character, but he can literally cut through steel and fire and survive. So, this last chapter, chapter 677, ends with Brownbeard and the Straw Hats and Law and Smoker and all the crew all together, and Luffy saying, all right, right, all together now. Let's raise some hell. And the next review I will be doing is the second half of Punk Hazard. I keep wanting to say Vegapunk, so I have to stop and pause myself and say Punk Hazard. I don't know why, because maybe I've been saying Vegapunk for a while now, waiting to meet this damn mad scientist. I really, really enjoyed this arc, and it was a lot to take in, but it really set the bar for this new world. I was a little worried. A lot of people have said that Marineford is really where the series peaks, which makes a lot of sense. It was an absolute perfect war. I can't imagine that One Piece will ever be able to top that again, but I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, because that peak was one of the greatest arcs I have ever seen and or read. And I just actually finished watching it in full in the anime, and it was so good, so emotionally driven, and you could really feel Ace's death happening in front of your eyes. And I just can't wait to see what's going to happen going forward with this Punk Hazard arc. I'm not even sure what arc is next, because I try not to look too far ahead into the arc, because I don't want too many spoilers, or any at all if possible. When I read that this arc was called Punk Hazard, I thought, well, that's a spoiler. Now I assume that Dr. Vegapunk is going to be here, which I was wrong, though, because he wasn't there. It was actually this clown guy, which, like I said, don't like that name, because there's already a buggy clown. We don't need another clown. This Caesar guy kind of reminds me personality of kind of like that Spandam guy, just a hateable villain, and I love that. I love the idea that I just hate this Caesar guy, and I can't wait for him to get his ass kicked by Luffy or Law. I have a feeling there is a connection here with Caesar and Law, because Caesar is connected with Virgo, who's connected with Doflamingo. I'm putting two and two together here, because Law said, I used to work for Doflamingo. So Doflamingo and Law are somewhat connected here. Are they related? Or was he just one of his minions at one point? I'm not sure. And I can't wait to find out in the second half. I haven't read the second half of Punk Hazard yet, because I wanted to do this review. And as you can tell, with this 1 hour of me just gibbering and jabbering, there's so much to be had in just the first half. A fight with a literal dragon, people, at the beginning, and then it ends with a giant slime creature eating apples that were turning into devil fruits. I still don't understand what that scene was about, and I can't wait to find out. I am Mr. Morfetto. This is Morphanime. Please subscribe, please share. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I will get there, because I believe, and I want you to believe in me. I'll talk to you later.